A very good morning to everyone joining us here in a very packed studio for Channel World Seed. It's wonderful to see so much interest in this conversation this morning, and welcome to our online audience. Today we're going to be discussing plant breeding innovation for climate resilience. This is a hugely important conversation at a time when climate change is creating unprecedented challenges for global food security, making resilient and adaptable crops more critical than ever. Plant breeding innovation is at the forefront of climate-smart agriculture solutions, equipping farmers with improved crop varieties that can withstand extreme weather, pests, and diseases. This panel today will bring together leading experts from the seed sector to discuss how cutting-edge breeding technologies such as genome editing are shaping the future of sustainable agriculture and climate resilience solutions. So let's meet our panel. We have Jack Peart, who is the Chief Business Officer at Tropic. We've got Gary Rudgers, who's the Senior Director of Regulatory Affairs at Simplot. And to my right here, we have Marc, who is Global Seed Advocacy Lead at Corteva. I'm going to begin by asking you what I said at the start. Why are we so excited in having this conversation? Why are we having it? Jack, I'll come to you first.
Thank you. Thanks, Claire. Can you hear me, by the way?
I can't hear you.
I think.
And try again.
Can you hear me now?
We can't hear
Hello?
Jack. We might need to get you a microphone.
Can you hear me? Ah.
Oh, coming through.
You can hear me now. Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you. Is that better? Excellent. Thank you, Claire. Thank you. So I'll start by saying Tropic is a young seed company focused on tropical agriculture. And what we're doing is using gene editing to develop new varieties of tropical crops. We focus primarily on banana, rice, and coffee. Right? So in answer to your question, why is it important? Why is this discussion important? Why am I excited to be here? I think historically, tropical crops have received very little innovation. And you know, this is quite alarming, quite striking.
Sorry, Jack. We're just going to pause for a second as we check your microphone. What I might do, why don't we...
Any joy?
Oh,
No.
great, we can all hear now.
Wow.
Sorry, can I ask you to start again, because we don't want to
Yes.
miss what you said.
Yes, of course, of course. I've practiced now, right?
Exactly.
So Tropic is a young seed company focused on tropical agriculture. And what we're doing is using gene editing to develop new varieties of banana, rice, and coffee. So answering Claire's question about why I'm excited to be here, why I feel that this discussion is very important, I think that, well, I know that tropical crops historically have received very little innovation. And this is striking given that much of the growth in global population is expected to come from the tropics in the coming years. So with that, I think that and with the advent of gene editing, I think that we have a real opportunity now to make very significant and tangible strides in bringing innovation to tropical crops and tropical agriculture to make it ultimately more productive, more climate resilient, and more sustainable.
Thanks, Jack. And Gary, I'll come to you next.
Great, thank you. Appreciate being here today. Talking about climate resilience crops, and especially in terms of plant breeding innovation, has been my passion for almost my entire career. And so I find that this is a very important topic now, because I think worldwide we're seeing devastating climate events, flooding, wildfires, droughts, extreme temperatures. And over the next few decades, these are likely to increase in severity, and it's going to have a significant impact on our agriculture and seed sector. So although this is very daunting, I do find this very exciting right now, because I think we're at a point in history where science and technology are advancing rapidly and are going to allow us to address these challenges if we act now. And so plant breeding innovations like gene editing will allow us to make climate resilient crops, more nutritious crops, and also allow us to be able to produce food to feed our growing population.
Thank you. And lastly, Marc, coming to you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Claire. So if you look at the glass half full, glass half empty scenario, on the negative side, on the climate side, and on the challenge facing humanity to produce food, 70% more food in the next 25 years for humankind, using less inputs in a more sustainable way. The glass isn't half empty, it's almost empty. We are facing a bigger crisis, I think, than many people and certainly many politicians really understand. But the glass half full part of that is we have the solution. Food starts with seed, and we in the plant breeding community have, over the last 100 years or so, increasingly understood how to adapt the genome of plants to our benefit. But we've only kind of scratched the surface. There's so much more diversity out there in current gene pools, which is, by the way, an important reason why we must have gene banks to preserve what we don't yet know. Being able to use technology such as gene editing as a way to identify the existing diversity in nature and then use that to our benefit by combining the different traits together is what it's going to take for us to reach this challenge. And so that, to me, is the reason why it's important and the reason why I'm excited, because now we have a new tool that we've learned, and we're probably going to learn a lot more over the next number of years and decades, and this gives us opportunity for us to do our job. And as long as and we'll get into regulatory in a moment, as long as we can do so in a regulatory environment that allows us that. Science is not the hurdle in this effort, it's an opportunity.
Marc, thank you. And I know we've got a future plant geneticist in the audience, Emre Gül here. You're an NGIN ambassador. Can we get a microphone over to Emre, please? It'd just be interesting, you've heard the panel speaking here, the exciting solutions as part of this conversation. What was the reason why you chose to study plant genetics? We'll wait till we get a microphone to you. Thanks, Emre.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you so much. First of all, it's a great pleasure to be here today. And right now, just as an information, I'm currently pursuing a master's degree in plant genetics, genomics, and breeding in Spain. And the reason why I have chosen this field is that my father is also an agricultural engineer. So since my childhood, I have been witnessing the impacts of this field on climate change, food security, and basically feeding the humanity. So this really impressed me and led me to choose to be a part of the science-driven solution of these challenges that are waiting us in the future. And today, I'm as a youth ambassador of NGIN, I'm representing the voice of young generation, young professionals who are eager to be involved in the solution of the future challenges in terms of the agricultural sector. And we are bringing fresh ideas, as well as bringing a strong sense of urgency about the problems that are waiting us. So it's a great pleasure to be here today, and I'm so excited for the panel.
Thank you, Emre, and it's great to hear the enthusiasm coming from the next generation in this space. Jack, I'm going to come to you. Can you share a little bit about, I loved our conversation before we had this panel. Will you share some of the new developments at Tropic? Can you share with the audience what's happening and some of the focus?
Sure, yeah. So one of the areas that we think about with bananas specifically is the amount of waste, right, during the production and supply chain. I heard on, it was one of the panels yesterday, the value chain panel, I think it was, where a statement by one of the panelists was made that I think 1/3 of all produce currently never makes it to consumers, right? Feedback. So 1/3 of produce never actually makes it to consumers, and in banana it's actually worse than that, certainly in the export market for banana. So when we think about Cavendish, which is the banana variety which is predominantly used for export, actually 50% of bananas that are produced will never actually make it to the consumer. And that is largely down to cosmetic challenges, frankly. So any imperfections, any scratches, any slight bruising during the picking and packing process leads to those bananas being discarded, because if they then reach supermarket shelves, they're never going to be picked up by consumers. Right? So one of the interesting varieties that we've developed now is a variety that shows less browning. So this was developed using gene editing, and it has less browning, right? So with that, we're expecting that we'll be able to reduce the amount of waste in that supply chain, right, quite significantly. It's also interesting that the flesh of this banana actually browns less, so it stays fresher for longer. So this actually opens up a new market for banana, and that is in the cut fruit segment. So we're looking forward to potentially seeing this banana enter the cut fruit segment. We're at a point now where we've launched this particular variety, so we're in the throes of that commercial launch now. So we've got production happening in Latin America, primarily Honduras. So seedling production and then sales of those seedlings are happening now. So come the end of this year, we could actually expect to see this non-browning banana reach our supermarket shelves. So this will be initially in the US and Canada. When we also think about waste in the supply chain, there's another variety that we're working on as well. So this is a variety, again, developed through gene editing that extends the green life of the banana. And again, during the shipping process of bananas, a lot of wastage happens there when bananas trigger ripening, right? So they're ripe before they reach port. So in this case, we've used gene editing to actually slow that process. So the green life phase of the bananas is extended, allowing much more efficient, less waste during that shipping process. So we're excited to launch that product. That'll be towards the end of this year, right? So Q4 of this year. We also work, as we mentioned before, on disease resistance, right?
Yeah.
So in the banana industry, there are a couple of diseases which really threaten global production right now. So one of them is Panama disease. So they're both fungal diseases. One is Panama disease, tropical race 4, and the other is black sigatoka. And again, we're working on gene editing approaches to develop varieties that can now resist these diseases, resist infection by these diseases. So that's a very big program that we're working on internally. Those launches won't happen until probably 27 we're looking at.
It's a significant piece of research. I remember reading a study in the US that bananas appear in around 99% of fruit bowls. When you think about the waste involved and the impact this could have when it comes to fruition is fascinating.
Indeed.
Yeah. And I might come to yourself now, Marc, to ask a little bit about some of the recent developments and breeding technologies happening at Corteva. Can you share?
Yeah, sure. So being in row crops, Corteva has a responsibility, especially in terms of increasing the sustainable crop production systems and doing so in a changing climate, so in a climate resilient way. Yield is a very big focus of us. The single biggest thing we think we can do in terms of climate adaptation is increasing the yield per acre with less inputs, with more outputs. That really drives sustainability. So a lot of our work is done around that. So we have a couple of projects underway that will result for the first time in a commercial maize hybrid being released by the end of this decade, and a few more hopefully soon after that. So it takes time to still breed and test varieties, so we don't do things, from year to year. We work, as we all know, long terms. But we have what we call a multi-disease resistant maize variety, maize hybrid, in which we've combined the disease resistance genes of several critical diseases that suppress yield, that are located across the genome of the maize plant, and we have put those together with gene editing on one locus. What that allows us to do is more quickly take those resistances and put those into a new breeding line as we need to adapt to changing climate conditions, and be able to give the grower high resistances to those diseases without the need for years and years of introgression and crossing and selection of various other plants to create that same resistance. So a really exciting development that helps the breeding process and results then also in a quicker output, better output for growers. Another example is reduced stature corn. Maize has a certain height, it's usually quite high, and we are working on a number of different solutions. Gene editing is one, to reduce the stature of that to be a lower growing hybrid. And what that does is it allows it to withstand adverse climate conditions better, things like winds, rain, drought, etc. So those are examples of some specific products that we're developing, again, to be released by the end of the decade. It takes time to breed, and we also, in row crops, we have to be considerate of the global regulatory environment which impacts trade. But more exciting almost than that, briefly, is the use of gene editing as a breeding tool early in the breeding program. So rather than developing per se discrete traits, like I mentioned before, gene editing is a way for you to identify and understand and use the existing genetic diversity in the plant's genome itself. And the more we learn about what all the different genes do, the more we can target the use of those specific genes, the more we can adapt the overall program to be able to provide the different traits that we're looking for. So this to us is really exciting, and that we feel is the next frontier in breeding work.
Amazing. And I do want to pick up on the regulatory question, but before I do, I want to come to you, Gary, because you've been doing some really interesting work around gene-edited strawberries. Could you share with us?
Oh, most definitely. With our partner, Plant Sciences Genetics in the U.S., we're working with an amazing strawberry variety. It tastes super delicious. It's very sweet. And one of the best things about it is it has twice the shelf life of traditional strawberries. So you may notice when you go to the grocery store or wherever you get your strawberries, you buy them, you bring them home, you go to the refrigerator the next day, and they're all spoiled. So it's very disappointing. Strawberries usually have to be eaten within the first 7 days after they're picked. But this actually results in about 20 to 30% of all strawberries being thrown out before they're ever consumed, which is a huge waste. But with this strawberry variety, with the extended shelf life, we believe we could reduce that waste to less than 10%. But what the strawberry challenge is here is that this strawberry variety that is so good, I've just eaten some last week, they're delicious, is that
you didn't bring any with you for us?
I wish I did. I ate them on the way here. They only bloom and produce fruit for 1 month out of the entire year. So what we've done is we deleted a single gene in the strawberry plant, which occurs in some wild strawberries, and now our strawberry variety blooms and produces fruit all year long. So our objective is to be able to produce this delicious, long-lasting strawberry all year long, and we've just launched it in the U.S. this year, and we plan on expanding that over the next couple of years. But hopefully, people will soon be able to see that in the supermarket in the United States, and we hope to expand that to other parts of the world.
I think what would be interesting for a lot of people here is how are you going to communicate that to consumers, gene-edited strawberries? What's your sort of plan behind that?
Yeah, so what our plans are is quite typically in the U.S., strawberries come in a clamshell, which is the package, clear plastic package. But we would likely put a QR code that you could scan on that in the grocery store. Takes you to a website, tells you the benefits of the product, the sustainability, and then how we develop that variety through gene editing.
Amazing. I'm going to take some questions from the floor. If you want to raise your hand, but can I also ask to give Jack a microphone as well, please? If that's while I'm looking for some other questions, or anybody want to respond to anything you've heard, or any questions about some of these new products you're hearing about?
Thank you. I think it's good.
We've got a question here. Can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm working as a regulatory consultant. So I was wondering, you are a big company from Corteva, you're more middle-sized. So what are certain learnings from the communications that was done for GMOs versus what you're currently doing for gene editing? Are there things that you wish you didn't do, or the things that you wanted to do that you're doing differently now?
Great question. Thank you very much. I might take that microphone over, give you the microphone. Would any of you like to tackle that one first?
Well, maybe I'll
Corteva,
start. So we have about, 3-4 hours, so we could talk a lot about what we did wrong. And a lot of things did go wrong, and it didn't go wrong from a science perspective, but it certainly went wrong from a public connection perspective. We were so excited when the biotechnology tools became available that we could do something scientifically, and we were able to accomplish a regulatory system that kind of worked, that we forgot one thing. We forgot to ask our consumers, the public, what their views of this might be. Now, there is nothing scary or anything else, of course, about biotech. There are exactly, I counted them, there are exactly 0 cases of there ever being a problem with environmental or human health or safety with biotech. But there is the perception that DNA is scary, so our communication could have been a lot better. And we've taken that learning as an industry as a whole, led by ISF, but also by the regional and national seed association network, including people like CropLife International and others, and trying to work more and more with downstream stakeholders to really have a different conversation about gene editing. And not only talking about what it is, but especially about why we're using it, what advantages does it bring. And our hope is that that will drive a different perception of this technology. And actually, in all reality, it really is. So we're doing a good job in that. Together, we need to push more forward.
Thank you. And Jack, from a sort of transparency and accountability point of view, when the product hits the market, is that something that you're really considering with your bananas?
It is, yes. So echoing exactly what Marc said there, I think that we do have a duty, right, to be very clear, very transparent to the consumer about what we're doing. I think very importantly, we need to talk about the benefits, right, a little more, and how this is going to benefit the consumer. What's really in it for them, right? In terms of who's going to be accountable for that, I think that's going to be shared across the value chain, or really it should be shared across the value chain, right? So we're a seed company, a seed producer, but obviously we then work with the producers that take our product on and grow that product. And we also have a duty, I think, to work with the retailers as well, so that we are providing very consistent, very clear communication to consumers ultimately. And again, spelling out, leading with the benefits, not shying away from the science behind them.
I think often it's been caught in the reactive space, and I think all your examples are about how do we get there on the front foot and be very proactive, and like you say, Jack, get the positives out right from the start. I'm gonna pick up on the kind of regulation side. I said that I was going to do that earlier, but building resilient, sustainable agri-food systems requires a policy environment that actually supports seed innovation. Are you seeing changes in this area globally?
Yeah, we are. So the question about biotech was a very opportune question, because the global regulatory environment that currently exists for biotechnology is not perfect. It does work, but it works with a lot of effort and cost and time, and that's a detriment to advancement of science. And that is very different nowadays with the regulatory environment for gene editing. There's a lot of very positive developments, first initiated by the country of Argentina in 2015 already, where they put a very favorable non-biotech type regulation in place. ISF has had for all those years a goal of a very straightforward, simple goal shared around the world, and that goal is a consistent message we're providing to regulators, and that is that the regulatory environment for gene editing should be, or any regulatory environment for that matter, should be such that it's proportionate. So proportionate to the risk. High risk means more regulations, low risk means less regulations. It must be science-based, it must be based on facts, not emotion, and it must be as much as possible harmonized across the world. And a guiding principle of ISF has always been that if a product could be or can be developed with the same characteristics, either conventionally or actually found in nature, then the regulatory environment for that product shouldn't be different than the regulatory environment that exists for natural products or conventional products. That's a very strong principle that we believe very strongly in, and that actually has been a message that's been well received, and more countries are in their own political system developing their own policies, most of which are actually quite aligned, and eventually the result of that will be the release of the potential of gene editing for breeders to apply and for society to benefit from.
And Gary, you've been in the regulatory field for over 20 years now. Have you seen a difference in the attitudes, support for plant breeding innovations?
Definitely so. We saw 20 years ago when I first kind of got in this area that these technologies were viewed as a GMO type application. And it took a lot of effort from industry, scientists, academics to educate regulators globally about what the technology is, what type of products could be developed. And I think through that communication, it really did change the tide, because as we're seeing a lot of countries now viewing a lot of these gene-edited products as conventionally bred type products. And that's, we're looking at that now in the EU and the UK. They're developing some policies, and they need to make sure that when they are developing these, that they do base them on science and the end product, because if we see the regulations that treat these gene-edited products too differently or require too much regulatory work, it will basically stifle this technology. And we won't see its application in strawberries. Maybe we won't see it in bananas. It will definitely block the use of these technologies significantly. So I'm remaining positive. I think that over the next several years, we'll see a lot of countries moving in the right direction with their regulatory policies. And it's definitely right in time for us to get these commercial products out into the market.
And as the regulations changed, how do mindsets change? Emre, I'm going to bring you back in here. If we can get a microphone over to Emre, please. This conversation has often been dominated by the emotion. It'd just be interesting from a young perspective. How do you think attitudes are changing to conversations around this, what we're talking about today? Have you seen it? Have you seen a change amongst your peers, or maybe not just your peers, given you're studying plant genetics, but slightly wider field?
Yeah, exactly. So, as a plant breeding student, my opinions are quite optimistic. But I really deeply value the opinions of my friends from all over the world, not only from Turkey or from Spain. So what we think is, I would like to highlight a few points so quickly. Firstly, unfortunately, still there is a lack of awareness, even in the agricultural students, within the agricultural students, because when you explain them what are the NGTs and what are the possibilities that we can achieve, they think like this is a perfect solution, but what are the drawbacks? Because as Marc mentioned, DNA is kind of scary for some people, and they are quite concerned about the drawbacks or possible drawbacks, and they need more education or they need more knowledge to overcome all these problems. And also, secondly, I would like to highlight the importance of word choice, because especially in the beginning of this new age, it is really important to choose true words, because if you choose a wrong word, it can turn into a fear or a mistrust, not only within the young people, but also for the whole population. So it's really important how we express the new innovations. And the lastly that I think I want to highlight is the impact of these new products, new advanced products on smallholder farmers, because some young professionals think that since the seed is advanced, maybe it will be more, it will cost more for smallholder farmers, and for them it will be more hard to cover all these expenses, or it will create a few company-oriented market, or maybe a monopoly. So at the end, we are quite concerned about the affordability and accessibility of the improved seeds. But overall, I can say for the young generation, we are really open-minded, and we are really excited for the following opportunities. If we can make a trustable or clear communication.
Thank you, Emre. I think it's really wonderful for everyone to hear your perspectives on that. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to do a bit of a quick fire on the panel here. The theme of the conference is Discovering Bold Horizons. I think that's pretty apt for the conversation this morning. I'm going to come to each of you and ask, what's your bold ambition for the future of plant breeding? Jack, over to you.
Thank you. I'll go back to the point about tropical crops. historically being neglected as far as innovation goes. So I guess bold ambition is for tropical crops to become the front runner as far as the application of gene editing technology goes, right? So in 10 years' time, it would be fantastic to see farmers in the tropics, growers in the tropics, growing various different varieties of tropical crops, many of which have been edited in some form, right? So ultimately making the tropical agriculture system, again, much more productive, much more climate resilient, and much more sustainable, ultimately.
Amazing. Thank you, Gary. Yourself, what's your bold ambition for plant breeding?
Yeah, I echo that in a way of, I hope that everyone in the world is able to take advantage of these technologies and the food. We see, I think, far too often that new technologies, advancements in agriculture only get applied to a certain part of our society. And these plant breeding innovations are adaptable, they work in almost every crop, and they're affordable. So if regulatory policies line up correctly, I think that this could impact smallholder farmers, everyone globally, and I really just hope to see this come true over the next couple, hopefully rapidly, but in the next couple decades.
Thanks, Gary. And lastly, Marc.
Yeah, to mirror everything that was said, which I very much agree with, the need is great. We really have a need to really seriously consider what we are doing in the crop and food production fields. So if indeed regulatory policies fall in line more and more, which we are comfortable is progressing in the right direction, but we can't stand still. If we have a adequate societal dialogue, so talking about communicating with the wider public and being open to conversations about why we're using technology, so there's more of a societal understanding and therefore support, which drives politicians, which drives regulations, by the way. It's all nicely interconnected. If that all happens, then we can unleash the power to large and small and existing and not yet existing breeding companies to take advantage of the genetic potential that exists in crops, in all crops indeed, tropical, non-tropical, small, large, etc. And if we do that, then the benefit to humankind will be enormous, because we literally are then, of course, feeding the planet starting with seed. So my bold ambition for the future horizon is that we not only can take this set of new breeding technologies that we know, but because we have unleashed the power of this, what is next? What is the next technology that's coming? What is the next horizon that is in front of us? We don't know that yet, but it excites me to look over the horizon and to try to get there. And I think that's what we're making a start on now.
Amazing. Thank you. We're going to call it a close there, but great to have such positive, dynamic conversation and to hear about some of the incredible work that you're all involved in. And thank you to our audience and to Emre for sharing so much with us. I think that was wonderful, your insights for everybody. Thanks for your time. So Jack, Gary and Marc, we could thank them in the usual way, please.
Thank you.